Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Anthony's been listening to that little man in the sweater vest on TV. He's packed his things and insists on leaving.
Son, where exactly do you think you're going?
Your retirement plan is a mess, Dad. Someone has to get it all under one roof.
Aw, come on now. It's not that bad.
Not that bad. It's all over the country. You have an IRA in Green Bay, a pension in Trenton, an annuity in Muskogee. You even bought life insurance in Honduras? Now, why on earth would you buy insurance in Honduras?
Because it was cheap. And Roberto threw in a free bottle of horchata.
Well, that's great, Dad. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to fly to San Pedro Sula and ask Roberto why he won't answer our calls.
Sounds like somebody should have called Tony Walker Financial.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and four-time author, Tony Walker.
Words spoken, words withheld. Words. They are quite powerful and in some cases profound indeed. In fact, it's not just words that are powerful, but even just one word spoken can drastically change the trajectory of conversations and actions moving forward. And nowhere are words more powerful as when those same words are written down. You see, there's something magical about the written word. For one, since it is written down, there's a lot less chance for confusion or that word somehow getting lost in the shuffle. Whereas a word spoken but not written down may soon be forgotten, or worse yet, taken out of context or being completely misinterpreted or misunderstood. That's why we wish to cover in detail today part 2 of our written word saga, and that is what to tell others before you die and what you should put in writing. Now, while last week's show focused on what to tell your spouse or partner before you die, today's message is geared towards your kids and what they need to know before you kick the proverbial bucket. And it's not just what you tell them, but where in writing can those same kids locate all of your most important wishes and, yes, documents so that they can settle your estate without a lot of cost, hassle, or surprises. So, grab a piece of paper and pen because you're definitely going to want to write this down. Welcome, folks, to the WorryFree Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, written and spoken word expert, retirement planning specialist, and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, before we get into part 2 of our series on what to tell your kids before you die, let me introduce 3 diehards who keep my words flowing for others to hear. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander. Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson, and, of course, last but not least, Miss Meek and Mild, Mary Beth Combs. Okay, there you sit, hopefully a tad stirred by our subject matter of what to tell your kids before you die, and even more importantly, now thinking of how and when to put your thoughts and wishes in writing before it's too late. Which is a good thing, and something you shouldn't feel guilty about if you have not yet done so. That's because of the thousands of savers I've met in person over the past 37 years, the most common flaw in their plans for retirement is not having a written game plan, or at least something in writing to tell loved ones what to do and where to find those most important documents when you die. So why in the world, knowing that at any moment today could be our last breath, would we procrastinate this simple act of putting our plans in writing so that others would be less burdened when we pass away? But never fear, because when I return, I'm going to show you how our WorryFree Production Studios is bringing into the studio to help understand this subject, not one, but 2 staff from our Bowling Green offices. That's right, Miss Heather Hughes and Leanne Tinsley will be joining us to share with you how we at Tony Walker Financial have the ability and expertise to help you put things in writing before it's too late. Good stuff coming your way. I'm Tony Walker. I look forward to this segment. We'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker here, and I'm so excited to have with us in the Louisville studios today, all the way from our Bowling Green offices. First of all, to my right, fellow fiduciary Ms. Heather Hughes. Heather, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
And over in the financial bullpen, she doesn't know we call it this, our tax certified specialist in the Bowling Green office, Miss Leanne Tinsley. Thanks for joining us, Leanne.
Thanks, Tony.
You know, we have so many, how was it, up to 5,000 game plans we've done now? The theme is written game plan, so this is kind of where we're going and why I wanted you two up here, but I think it's around 5,000 we've orchestrated.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, I think so. And of those 5,000, how many people would you say over the last several years just call in on a regular basis that are current clients, we have the game plan, and they've had changes come up that no one anticipated? You see a lot of those.
I get calls every day
Oh,
on that.
literally.
Yeah, literally every day. So, they really use that as a guide to say, okay, this is what I'm going to try to expect, but things happen. Mm-hmm. And so they'll give me a call and say, hey, can I buy a car? Or we've had this health issue come up, things like that. And then we just kind of look at the game plan and see how we can adjust.
And can you imagine, I know, Heather, you've been with me now, over 15 years, correct?
Right.
I know we talk about those long spreadsheets, as you like to say, that you had to do those Excel spreadsheets, but can you imagine if we didn't have this proprietary software trying to keep up with all of our clients and update that thing? I don't know how we'd do it.
It would be arduous for sure. So.
You almost said something else. I like arduous. That sounds much better. Thank you, Heather.
Selective, yeah.
And then before we kind of get into our process and everything, I guess Leanne Tinsley, you've been with us how long now?
About 3 years now.
3 years. And we're going to get into your background here in just a little while. But I guess from the income planning standpoint, although you're tax certified, tell our viewing audience kind of where you've kind of molded into and your work in the income planning department and what you've seen, how that's evolved over the last couple of years since you've been with us.
Well, the tax planning aspect of the plan came in really handy when I was learning that portion of the business that we're doing, and I became very interested in the income planning department and putting those puzzles together for those clients to help them realize their dreams of retirement.
And as we record this show on February 9th, 2022, it sounds like we won't name his name yet, but we got a new hire coming on board to help because our tax planning department has grown so much, and I'm sure you're excited about that. So you're going to train that individual in the difference between tax preparation and tax planning, and then that'll allow you to spend more time with income planning, correct?
That's the idea. The tax planning department has grown a lot with the adding of Roth conversions and RMD, so I'm looking forward to having some more help in that area.
And real quickly, before we get into some of the slides I want to go over, since you have been in tax preparation for years as your vocation and now tax planning, explain to the audience as best you can, what's the difference between someone who prepares your income taxes versus doing tax planning for retirement planning?
Well, the biggest difference, I believe, is a tax preparer only takes the information that has already happened. That's in stone.
It's almost historical,
That's
right?
exactly right. And a planner, you're getting into the preparation of what you might see in a return. So you still have time to make some adjustments in that area as a planner.
Yeah, and then also down the road, as we're going to see today, even planning for taxes sometimes 10, 20, 30 years down the road, correct?
Absolutely, Tony.
Yeah, so what I want to go over, we've got 3 scenarios, folks. Probably won't have time to cover them today, and I'm going to ask you all to stay afterwards so we can do another show because this is some awesome stuff. And quite frankly, since we have the studio in Louisville, I don't have a chance to have Heather and Leanne in often, so you didn't know you're going to do this. You're going to get it roped into 2 shows. You good with that, Heather?
Oh, absolutely.
You love all this anyway.
I do.
I know Leanne
so much.
does. So first of all, what I thought we would do is just slow it down just a little bit and remind people of our process. Now again, our theme is written game plans, the importance of writing things down. So let's talk about that first step in the process and our process sheets. And I know you're interviewing more and more people, but I see most of the people on the first appointment. What would it be like if I came back in the office, I know we always have our planning meetings, and I didn't have anything written down in terms of the goals and what the clients are wanting? Can you imagine? Where would we even go with that information?
Well, it would just be impossible.
Or you just throw them in a product.
Yeah.
And that's my concern, is I think with folks if somebody's not clarifying your vision and then taking what you want in life and putting that in writing, to me it's kind of hard to get a written game plan. So it all starts there. Then the second thing is our assessment. I tell you what, rather than going through these 5 steps, I'm going to stop at assessment. Derek is over there let's go to the written game plan now. Because this is our proprietary software. This is what, you're smiling because you're thinking about those old spreadsheets you don't have to do anymore.
You read my mind, exactly.
So what happens, folks, after the first step, and again, there's no cost for any of this. What's funny is a lot of advisors won't show you anything until you agree to invest. We don't do that. You work with us, meet with us, you get to see this and take this with you. And you're not obligated to do anything, but if you would kind of describe, Heather, a little bit about our game plans and what this game plan is communicating to not only those folks that we're serving, but also their kids and their loved ones when they pass away.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, this makes me smile because I have a lot of pride in you and I developing this, and it took a lot of hard work and a lot of energy to get it to where it is today. But I really feel like it is just a quality add-in to a retirement plan. I don't know how we would do it otherwise. This allows people to understand what assets they have, how to use them, when to deploy them, and if not, look at, for this instance, you've got
this was
8 or 10 accounts. How would anybody know, where do I start? Mm-hmm. And this really kind of gives them the opportunity to say, oh, this makes sense. Use this now because of X.
And then back to Leanne. So this is what's interesting about our software and where we have our individual departments at Tony Walker Financial. So now we kind of slide over to the income tax planning department. So Leanne, when someone calls in, a client, and says, I'm thinking about buying a car or thinking about buying a house, how does this help you from a standpoint of calling up the game plan and giving them some responses pretty quickly?
Well, we initially pull up that game plan, make sure that that's current information, but we can immediately see what their current taxable income is. So, they're not immediately going and trying to gather all that information, which most people don't have readily available. Then we can look at all their accounts, whether they're qualified or non-qualified, and say, make an educated decision on, this is where you should take this money, this is going to be the tax hit, and then they can go from there and make that decision at that time.
That's awesome. And speaking of tax hit, before we get into several of these scenarios we want to cover, Derek, if you would put up this is, we call this tax bracket creep. So Leanne, if you would, explain the importance of that. And so hopefully, folks, you've got that visual of the income plan that you just saw. Now all of a sudden, Leanne, somebody calls in and they, obviously most people don't understand this tax bracket creep. Explain this graph to people and why this is so important coupled with the income plan.
Well, anytime you're adding any taxable income to your yearly income,
let's say here, right?
Let's say you're starting in the 12% bracket of your taxable income. And if you're having a major life event, you're doing a home remodel, or you are, like Heather said, buying a car, where you take that money from is going to change your taxable income for that year potentially. So when we make those decisions, if you're in the 12% bracket and you don't want to go up into that 22% bracket, we try to find a way to get you those funds without pushing you over into the next bracket.
And then Heather, I know we talk about this a lot from a planning standpoint. These brackets, and obviously folks, let's say in that example, you're right at the 81,000 mark and maybe you're going to take out 50,000. We'll see these examples in a minute. Maybe 50,000 to buy a car from your tax-infested IRA, which throws you in a 22% bracket. But we talk about this a lot, Heather. My concern is these taxes seem high now, but what could they be 10 or 15 years from now? What are your thoughts on this, and what do you think is going to happen with these tax laws?
These seem like big numbers now, but historically these are maybe not all-time low, but they're low.
Yeah.
So, I can see, especially when you see the difference between the 12 and 22, I see that's going to narrow. Mm-hmm. And, current administration, politics aside, they are targeting higher earners. So that 37% is probably going to go up as well. I think, too, another misconception on the tax bracket is when you go to that 22% bracket from 12, it's the next dollar that's taxed at 22% versus a lot of people think, oh, I hit that 22% bracket, everything I've earned is taxed at 22%. And that's a big misconception. So kind of wanted to clear that up. But our job is really trying to manage these brackets for clients just so they aren't paying extra taxes when they really don't need to.
That's a good summary of that. So folks, what we're going to do in our time remaining, we've got 3 different scenarios. And I think what we're going to do, we're just going to cover one of these scenarios again in the time remaining. And then I'm going to make the young lady stay around. We'll do another show for next week and cover 2 different scenarios. But you're going to want to stay tuned for this. So here who's this. This is who this is geared towards, okay? If you're retired or retiring soon, you have a 401k, IRA, TSP, whatever, you're going to want to watch this. Also, if you're an adult child and probably you're going to be inheriting from mom or dad a 401k, IRA, or some other tax-infested qualified plan out there, you're going to want to stay tuned. We're going to show you the tax ramifications, why having an income plan is important, and our process for helping you keep more of your money at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You stay tuned. I'll be right back. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. We care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and quite frankly, we are having a big time here. I'm glad you all agreed to do another show because I had no idea we would run out of time so quickly, but it's been so interesting to hear from you. This is my sidekick in Bowling Green, in charge of the Bowling Green office, fellow fiduciary Heather Hughes, and then of course we have our tax certified specialist, Leanne Tinsley. So thank you again so much for joining us. So we just have a few minutes here, but I've got to cover the Bible segment. I can't neglect that. So basically what we're going to do, so folks, you're going to want to stay tuned for this, and then be sure to watch next week's episode. And then also, too, by the way, in case you missed some of these episodes, you can always go to our YouTube channel. If you would, Aaron, let's put that up. All you got to do is go to youtube.com, and all you're going to do is type in Tony Walker Financial, and you can watch all the episodes of the Worry-Free Retirement there. So just a reminder. Okay, just got about 3.5 minutes here. So first, let's set the stage. We have, let's say, someone who's in their mid-70s. We'll say it's a widower, doesn't matter, one spouse, okay, the other spouse is deceased. They have $600,000 in an IRA. We with, ladies, you all, okay. $600,000 in an IRA. Now this person passes away. As you know, folks probably know that an IRA goes by beneficiary. Now, one option they have, Heather, what could this person has 3 children, by the way, and in this scenario, we're going to divide it up equally.
Right.
So $200,000 per child. So if a child wanted to, what could they do with the money? What's the obvious thing they could do if they wanted to?
They could take the money and run.
And the tax hit.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't know if I told you about this. I don't know if you've heard this story, Leanne. I had an elderly gentleman who passed away, and he said, I want to leave, I remember him doing this, he said, I want to leave some of this money, it was an IRA, to my grandson. And I said, well, that's fine. And I'd forgotten about it. He passed away, the grandfather. At the front door here in Louisville, a young man was standing out the door. He goes, I'm here to see Tony Walker. I mean, I could tell he was probably 18 or 19. And I said, well, come on in. And I'm looking through the file, and he said, well, my grandfather died and said whenever I died to come see you. So I sat down, and well, he was going to get about $80,000. So I asked him, I said, well, son, here's all your options. I'm going through stretch IRAs back. We could do that and all this stuff. And he just kept nodding and smiling. And I said, and one option is you could just cash in and take it. He said, I'll take that option. I mean, I bet that money was spent. But he didn't care about taxes, didn't care about anything. It was funny. Okay, so in this example, so we are going to have 3 children. They're each going to get $200,000. So in the time remaining, let's talk about this first child. And basically, this is a 46-year-old, okay, married, making $100,000 a year currently. Now stop right there, Derek. and they have a mortgage of $125,000. This is key, okay? Remember, they're getting ready to inherit $200,000. Keep going, Derek. They don't have a lot of money in savings. We see that a lot. They inherited $200,000. So let's hold on just a second there, Derek. So in this case, this person wants to pay off that mortgage, which, I mean, that's reasonable. I've seen people do that. We call this found money. They hadn't planned on getting the money, right? So why not pay off the mortgage? So Leanne, and in fact, I think you said, what happened recently? You said someone pulled out some money and forgot to take it. What was that situation you were telling me about before we went on air?
I had a gentleman call in who was getting ready to do his tax return, and he had taken a large distribution last year, and he did not realize that that was now going to make a large portion of his Social Security taxable.
One of those
Yes.
rippling effects.
That's correct.
So let's go through the taxes here, Leanne. You got federal taxes of $44,000. What's the NIT mean?
NIT stands for Net Investment Tax, and that's an additional tax that the federal government puts on high-income earners when they pull a significant amount out of those qualified funds. So that's going to kick in this example.
State tax, there's another. Keep going, Derek. So total taxes, $55, and what's the net on that? $144. So they got enough to pay off the house, but that's about it.
Yeah, a little left over maybe for a remodel or whatever, but yeah.
So folks, here's the thing. We're gonna wind this down. I've got to get to the Bible segment, but we're gonna get in deep dive into this next week on the show. We're gonna cover this one and the two other children. What happens? What you're gonna find out is everybody's different. There is no one size fits all. So ladies, you all stay around. We're gonna record those other segments. I'll be right back though with what the Bible has to say about money. You stay tuned. I'm Tony Walker. You're watching The Worry-Free Retirement. Whether you're a long-time viewer of the Worry-Free Retirement or just catching it for the first time, know this: you can watch past episodes and educational clips by visiting our YouTube channel. Just log on to youtube.com and search Tony Walker Financial. What does this Bible have to say about your retirement? Actually, not much. In fact, in the Bible, there's very little description of work life, when to retire, how to retire, what to tell your kids before you die, whether to max out your 401k, or whether to take your pension as a lump sum or through installments. No, there's no mention of how to retire in the Bible because in those days, and actually the days leading up to 1935, most people didn't plan for retirement. You see, prior to the government creating the Social Security system and the magical age of 65 written into law as to when Americans could receive their retirement benefits, people just worked and worked until they could no longer work. Why? Well, partly because most people didn't live as long back then as they do today. And more importantly, if you wanted a roof over your head and something to eat every day, you had to work. People didn't need a written game plan for retirement because, well, they never planned on retiring. Yet today, with people living longer than ever before, their worries are those that my granddad and his generation of savers would have never been worried about. You see, this modern-day version of stockpiling money so you can one day retire, and all that comes with all this uncertainty of how long you're going to live and how long the money will last, all of this is going to require a written game plan. Sadly, as we have discussed today, something that most savers do not possess is a written game plan. A plan such as we provide our clients at Tony Walker Financial, one that clearly spells out what will happen to your assets upon death and how easy it will be for your family to settle your affairs quickly with such a game plan. Yet, as important as a written game plan for retirement might be, it pales in comparison to the best written work on life, death, and the hereafter ever written, and that's the Bible. You know, the Apostle Paul knew a thing or two about God as he relied on not just God's Spirit, but His written Word. We studied 1 Corinthians chapter 15 over the last few weeks on this show, and notice now in verse 2 of this same chapter where Paul reminds his listeners to hold fast to the word he preached, which would be the words he spoke to whoever would want to listen. Notice verses 3 and 4 where Paul reminds the listener where God's truth, in other words, where Paul learned it, was from the written word, or as he refers to as the Scriptures. You see, friend, God's gracious desires for you and I are all in writing and all contained in the Bible. He is not a God of confusion, but one of great clarity. The Bible is the only written word needed to get us through this world and know where we're going to eventually end up. And best of all, the words written within these pages cover any topic or concern one might have, yes, even how to worry less about money and retirement. But in order to learn from it, in order to understand what it is God wants for you and I, we have to read His written word. But Tony, you say, that written word you speak of sure seems pretty complicated to me, to which I would say, no worries. Let me show you how easy it is to get started learning from God's word, and I call this simple little method of reading God's word the 30-day biblical sprint. And here's how this little exercise of 10 to 15 minutes a day will work. So basically, here's what I want you to consider doing. For the next 30 days, you're going to grab this Bible, doesn't matter what version it is, and turn to the book of Ephesians. Why Ephesians? Because it's a really good book to start with. Now here's what I want you to do. In the quiet of your own time, doesn't matter what time of day, as long as it's a quiet time, 10 to 15 minutes, start in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 1, and read slowly until that 10 or 15 minutes is up. Now here's the secret. Close the Bible and go about your business. The next day, you're going to pick up from where you left off. So let's say you read through verse 10. You start in verse 11 and you read for 10 or 15 minutes and then shut the Bible and go about your business. Now you might say, well, Tony, this looks like a pretty short book, this book of Ephesians. What have I done in 10 days? No worries. You go back on the 11th day to the start of Ephesians and read it all over again. And you might say, well, that sounds preposterous. Well, here's what's going to happen. What's fascinating about God's Word. When you read the same verses over and over again, which you'll find yourself doing during this 30-day sprint, you'll understand better and better what God is trying to tell you. It's all about the written Word. Well, speaking of written Word, if you don't have a written game plan, you're probably in that same confusion you are about the Bible. You don't know what you've got, you don't know how to use it, and you sure don't know how to communicate it to your loved ones. Well, I've got good news, friend, because at Tony Walker Financial, that's where we can help. For more than 37 years, I've literally overseen more than 5,000 written game plans. I've personally seen more than 15,000 savers. Folks, we know this retirement world very well. So if you're sitting there right now retired, maybe thinking of retiring soon, and you don't have a written game plan, you don't have a fiduciary you can trust, you feel like you're out here just going it alone, don't do that. Take action right now. Call the toll-free number on your screen, or better yet, if you like, just go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. And when you get there, all you do is click on that Let's Get Started button. Now, when you click on it, that information is confidentially sent to our offices. You will be contacted, and either I'll meet with you by phone for a 10-minute free fiduciary phone call, or if it warrants, the owner of the company, that's right, Tony Walker, I'll be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. So do it now, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call the toll-free number on your screen. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. I look forward to seeing you next week on the Worry-Free Retirement, but you remember, between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.